analysis design, there we come across two terms. One is priori analysis, another is posterior analysis. So the priori analysis, what we try to do, we try to analyze that is related to the complexity. Okay, sometimes it will be maybe looks to be very similar. So that there we comment about the complexity of the algorithm, and then posterior analysis, which also very much similar to the experimental analysis. There we talk about complexity. We only theoretically analyze or claim the complexity of the algorithm. Then in the posterior analysis, which is very much similar to the experimental analysis, where we take the help of a language, we code our algorithm with the help of the language that is directly or indirectly understood by the machine, and we execute with the different instances and comment the behavior of the algorithm, or you can say the how the program behaves. So the formal analysis is the proving is the domain in which we prove the correctness of the algorithm. So the basic steps of the correctness, this is one type of artwork, you can say. I mean, there is not much technicality involved, but this is very much essential when you are going to compare two algorithms. So what I feel, this is one of the instrument one people can use. I think I told you in the last class also, because when you are preparing a thesis, just we write down the algorithm, then we show some results by implementing with help of a simulator or a help of a programming language. But that is not the exact or not the appropriate way one should write in a thesis. So once you write down the algorithm, you can do two things. You can comment on the complexity. If the algorithm you are proposing has a better complexity in comparison to the previous researcher's algorithm, so you have done the major things that theoretically you prove your algorithm complexity is high. But when there is that leaves a question mark whether your algorithm is correct or not. Okay. Experimental analysis, as you know, we have also tried out with sorting techniques. We experiment with different instances or different type of the input data. Then we comment something that how they are behaving to the sorted data, semi-sorted, pre-sorted, or like this. So in case of your theoretical analysis, the correctness or the formal analysis, what is the basic objective? The objective or the aim of this particular study is to prove the algorithm works for any instance of the data input. But if you look into any instant, let us say I am talking of a 4-digit number. So if I am going to list all the 4-digit numbers, it will be a huge set. But without doing that, I have to confirm that whatever the input you will supply with 4-digit number, the algorithm will behave for what it is designed. That means it will produce a desired output. Okay, your algorithm may be very simple. Your it is accepting a 4-digit number and it is just adding the digit position to find out a sum which is also an integer. So the main advantage of this approach that if rigorously applied to guarantee the correctness of the algorithm without experiment, without considering the all possible inputs or experimenting with all possible input. The disadvantage is also listed like this. It is difficult of finding a proof mainly for the complex algorithm. So indirectly it says it opens a new area for us. Suppose I am talking of a dynamic load balancing algorithm for cloud. And if I am finding in the literature, none of the researcher has proved the algorithm which they have proposed is not, I mean, there is no proof for the correctness, then you got a catch. So you are the first person who is trying to prove that the algorithm is to be correct. So this is the way one can utilize this expertise. Again, I say that also I told in the class is only this is a skill which is very local to only computer science people. You may find very good work on image processing, machine learning is being done by the other branch of people or other electrical engineering peoples. Maybe sometimes mechanical engineering people did a lot of things related to the AI and the robot part finding. But one is complexity calculation, second is the correctness proving, third is the lower bound or establishing a lower bound of the algorithm. These are the art only known to the computer science. That means if you are looking into the literature and find that there are 10 different algorithms for finding the shortest path, but you will never find none of the author has talked about the correctness and find out or compare them with the complexity or establishing a lower bound. So you can, how you are going to approach, you first establish a lower bound for a pathfinding problem, then you have 10 different algorithms, you have to rewrite those algorithms. This is one of the tasks many people misses, because they say that the algorithm is there in that book, I have just implemented. But if you'll find the notation or the way the algorithm is written is failed to meet the standard of the algorithm writing. That's why one of the tasks is that if you are comparing a number of algorithms, you have to rewrite them into according to a standard pseudocode. Why? If you write them into a proper format, then only you can calculate its complexity and you can compare. Then comes your correctness. Maybe in the process of proving correctness, you failed to prove the correctness of a algorithm, or you able to establish one of the algorithm is found to be incorrect. So what you can say, this algorithm is not true or not behaving properly to all possible instances. So you are discarding, because suppose someone asks you to compare three best algorithm for pathfinding. So you say no, I will be only taking two algorithm. Why? During the correctness proof, I found that two of the algorithms are correct, three is not correct. So I am going to compare the two. So please remember, this is, I think I told you, one of our PhD students. Uh, of course, I can say he's not extraordinary brilliant student, but when he prepared the thesis, he used this correctness is so efficiently. Maybe I can share the thesis if possible. This is my message to mostly to the PhD students. You'll be definitely appreciate the way the thesis is written. Every algorithm he proposed is followed by the correctness. Okay, so that sometimes actually motivates us that okay, we are going to design a very quality thesis, mathematically is being proved. But this study, though it is appear in the UG level, but not considered seriously by the students or by the professors, that they should know how to prove the algorithm to be correct. Okay, so in case the algorithm is decomposed into sub algorithms, this sometimes happens. You have to perform with one algorithm, you are dividing them into sub algorithms. Sub algorithms is the good example is that maybe you can take the example of a divide and conquer algorithm. One algorithm is going to be repeated depending on the computation of a smaller instances. So on the other hand, the formal approach could lead to the better understanding of the algorithm before implementation. So this is the activity which is a prior analysis, or it is, or you can say in prior analysis you have two things. Either you are calculating complexity or you are going to prove that the algorithm is to be correct. So formal rule of the logic to show that the algorithm meets the specification. So what the people try to do, or what is a question in the exam? The question is very simple. You have write down, or instead of the algorithm, this algorithm is replaced. This algorithm is replaced just with a word that binary search meets its specification. I repeat again, the question will be binary search meets its specification, or binary search algorithm meets its specification. And if it is written like this, it is assumed that you are writing a typically binary search algorithm, but that question is not proper. If any time you will find that somebody has written merge sort algorithm meets its specification, then why it is not an appropriate question? Because I am referring to a particular algorithm, rather than you will be asked write down the merge sort algorithm, prove that that algorithm or this the algorithm which you have written meets its specification. This is the question. You asked to write down a binary search algorithm, maybe it is asked to write down a iterative binary search algorithm, prove that the algorithm meets its specification. Okay, so you can find for a typical binary search is the good example. You'll find many pedagogy material how the binary search algorithm is proved to be correct. So the main step of the formal analysis is of the correctness of algorithm is that identification of the properties of the input data. Properties of the input data, maybe it's like this: your algorithm only accepts a as a integer, b as a integer, or maybe something like this: a b are the positive integer less than 99. It's something that so that this is the problem's precondition is to be examined. Identification of the property which must be satisfied by the output data. So it is going to produce the output. Let us say I am started with two integer and I am simply adding those two integers. So my output will be again a integer. So based on the numbers, suppose say 16-bit number, 16-bit number, you want to do the multiplication. So definitely the number which you will obtain maybe 32-bit number maximum. So this type of condition has to be considered. Okay, but in the algorithm definitely we don't have any data type, so we argue without any data type of the numbers. So one things to be remember: what will be the precondition, what will be the post condition of a algorithm is to be listed. Once you want to prove the algorithm to be correct, step number one is you need to find out which are the preconditions, which are the post conditions. Now the proving and the starting from the actually proving process starts from the precondition, executing certain actions which are the steps which are being numbered and appeared in the part of the algorithm, and that obtains the post condition. Like let us look into that. Let us look into the simply finding the solution to a quadratic equation. So what is your precondition? You have A, B, C. Is there any precondition? Anybody can respond. What is the precondition? Is there any precondition? A is a positive integer.
Sir, A must be positive
Positive integer.
integer.
B is a positive integer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. A is a positive integer. B is a positive integer. What about C? A, B, C, three are positive integer.
No, sir. Only A should be positive. B, like
Positive
it can be
integer.
zero.
It can be zero. Fine. So we start with some precondition. So when a is a positive integer, and I just say ki a cannot a be positive integer, b and c can be zeros. So depending on the input, now you may take b equal to 0, c equal to 0, a equal to 5. So for that, the formula is well defined. Discriminant is b square minus 4ac. So based on that, you are finding you are going to some what post condition. What is that? Maybe based on your ABC value, you are calculating the discriminant, and discriminant depending on the value, discriminant can be 0, can be greater than 0, can be less than 0, and it goes to certain post condition. So post condition, moreover, it is not entering into a condition, rather than it is producing the root or the solution to the equation. Okay, so this is the example of a pre and post condition, which is very simple. So in this process, the precondition of the algorithm is a predicate that described the initial states before execution. Now, if I'll take this particular things to a difficult problem, or maybe a problem with a little bit of complex problem like 4-queen problem. What is a precondition? A whole chessboard, 4 cross 4 chessboard is empty. So what is the post condition? What is the post condition? Because your objective is to place the queen, so you can show a particular state where all the 4 queens are placed. Okay, then how this happens? How this happens? It happens through the transition. So post condition of the algorithm, a predicate that describes the final states. Maybe if a precondition you are defining in terms of the tuples or with the 4 bits. So post condition also you are defining in terms of the 4 bits. So when I'm going to write down a state, if I'm writing with 4 bits or maybe 4 cross 4 matrix, I'll have a transform to the next state. The algorithm is correct if we can prove that if the precondition is true and post condition must be true. Precondition true implies post condition true. If precondition is to be false, then post condition must be false. Okay, so precondition implies the post condition. How you are going to argue, let us say, in case of finding a solution to the quadratic equation? Any argument? Okay, suppose for binary search, how you are going to say that? Of course, discuss. What is a precondition for binary search?
The array must be sorted.
Arrow must be sorted and without any duplicate, right? Without any duplicate. Is duplicate is permitted in binary search?
No, sir.
No. So these are the precondition. But how it leads to the post condition? What is the post condition? What will be the post condition?
Sir, if array is not sorted, then probability of finding the given element is not 1, or not confirmed that we
No,
will
no.
find the given element.
No, no. Precondition implies the post condition. That means if you are not, as you say, the negation of the P, huh, implies negation of Q. P implies Q. Let us assume this statement is P implies Q. Now you say, suppose you fail to meet the precondition, right? So what will be there? You remember that for simple formula, if P implies a Q, what do you write? Negation of Q.
Negation of
Not
P,
P or Q.
negation of P or Q,
uh,
something like
or
that.
implies that. So this is very much similar to that. Very simple argument. Okay. Now this is the diagrammatic representation. You see, you are looking into the precondition and the post condition. Let us say you are writing a simply a program which will swap the value of the two variable a and b. So the ascertain before the algorithm precondition. So precondition may be the value a equal to 3 and b equal to 5. Then the algorithm execute successfully the post condition a equal to 5 and b equal to 3. So the a equal to 5 and b equal to 3 is resulted because you have taken a opposite value a equal to 3 and b equal to 5. If this algorithm is proved to be correct, if it can be proved that if the precondition is true, that means a equal to 3 and b equal to 5, the post condition must be true. So that means the multiple steps logic which you have written that takes the precondition as the input and transform them into the post condition is correct. The correctness of the algorithm that says the processing steps is correct. Here processing steps are represented as a algorithm, much not detailed. It will be there. Now look into this. So this is a precondition of y equal to 6, and then if you look into this particular algorithm, x equal to 2 and z equal to x plus y, and if y is greater than 0, z equal to z plus 1, else j equal to 0. So if I look into the algorithm, and if I'll be showing the complete algorithm, and it is going to execute for a limited number of steps, or you are doing the hand tracing, you will not able to find the post condition z equal to 9. Then the algorithm is proved to be and the algorithm is not correct. So actually this is example. Sometimes it's not possible to illustrate with example how to prove the correctness, because this is the approach which is used for the theoretical proving. So the correctness proof is a formal mathematical argument. That means you have to put some logical argument. There is no deduction type of things that you are reducing a equation to another equation. So that means your algorithm is always produce the correct output for any permitted input. For any permitted input. Okay, so we are supplying a valid input and we are getting the correct output. So now this the techniques which is used to prove that is the proof by construction, proof by induction, and proof by contradiction. So any of these three out of these three approach, anyone can be used to prove the algorithm to be correct. Okay, so also we have defined the partial correctness as we have discussed. Now the most important condition or the property which is looked into, that is called loop invariant. So loop invariant is logically expression with the following property. This holds true before the first iteration of the loop. Okay, suppose let us look into the for loop. You have initialized I equal to 1. Okay, that is a process of initialization. If it is true for an iteration of the loop, it remains true before the next iteration. That means you are looking into I, and if it is a loop with the I with the, and it is predicted that I will be incremented by 1, and finally on successful implementation also you are finding I will be incremented by 1. So this is looks to be very natural, but this is the argument to be written if it is true. That means initialization is there, definitely it will be incremented linearly in the next loop or next iteration. So if it is remain true before the next iteration, so this next iteration, the terminology is known as the maintenance. When the loop terminates, the invariant along with the fact that the loop terminates gives useful property that helps to show the loop is correct or terminate. So take the example of the for loop. You start with I equal to 1. Because this algorithm is correct, after the end of the every iteration that I value is getting terminated. And there is a condition in the process of termination. It reach with the condition when the for loop terminates or the for loop finishes. Suppose you have written a for loop of I. You start with I equal to 1. But in between the program, somewhere you have written I equal to, again you return the previous value, or you increment something I equal to I plus 5, and you have taken the limit of the I starting from 1 to 10. So definitely you are skipping the 4 steps, and that algorithm, can you call it as correct? Are you getting me? You have written a algorithm should execute 10 times. Instead of that, you increase the step. So what will be the phenomena? The algorithm terminates. The algorithm will terminate. Are you going to accept that condition? So okay, now you come to the condition when you will be saying that the loop is not correct. When you look into the simple loop without any condition or step size 1, it incremented in each iteration and it meets a condition. Suppose maximum value is n. When that I value is matches with the n, it enter into the loop, and when in the next iteration when I value exceeds n, it will not enter into the domain of the loop and it will exit. So if we'll look into this for loop example, this will be one of the major instrument to prove the algorithm to be correct with a loop environment. Okay, so the similar to the mathematical induction that you can say if the loop terminates in one step, if I equal to 1 to 1, the algorithm terminates n number of steps. If I equal varies from 1 to n, then algorithm terminates with n plus 1 number of steps if the loop is from I to n plus 1. So this is the way the mathematically induction through which you can prove. So this is a simple example of the correctness of the linear search, and we are discussing the loop invariant of the while loop with reference to the given algorithm. So what you need to prove? If the algorithm is terminate, then it produces the correct result. Okay, or it meets the specification. You can write in the question. You can in the question you can find that search meets the specification. So now the first phase is initialization phase, second maintenance phase, third the termination phase. So are you in a position to write that this algorithm terminates? Yes, please. Are you in a position to write this algorithm terminates? You see the termination condition is majority of the time look into loop invariant. Okay, so how you can argue that the this particular algorithm terminates? Yes, please. Anyone can respond how you will argue that this algorithm terminates?
So the
Yes.
condition I is less than n, I is less than equal to n ensures
Okay.
that whenever I gets greater than n, it terminates.
No, here something hidden is that which one is incremented? I is incremented, right? I is
Yes, sir.
incremented or not? Yes, you have to look into that because for first instance it is true, for second instance is true. Every instance step number 3 adds a value to I. So you are because the I is less than equal to n and I is to be incremented linearly one at a time. So you are definitely reaching at a state where I will be equal to n, and if I will be equal to n, in next step you are reaching at a condition the I will be greater than n, so the algorithm terminate. This much the argument you need to write, which sometimes looks to be very obvious. Okay, so this is the loop invariant property. There is nothing difficult. I mean, nothing so hi-fi that so some I have to write so many things for the algorithm. Okay. So the loop invariant, the invariant precondition and postcondition in a high level abstraction or the way you want to write, most corrected proofs took sometimes something like this. Define a predicate P that is true for the correct state of the algorithm. So what is a predicate here? What is a predicate here?
Any
Can you?
value which is going
No,
around the
it
loop.
is a value, right? I'll ask you to prove that the 0 1 knapsack problem is correct. So what if the predicate is a? What is the predicate? Let us come to the 0 1 knapsack problem. What you try to prove that is correct, which is possible. That is the 3 item what you are selecting. Can I call 100 as a predicate? Can I define? Suppose I am not selecting first item, I am not selecting the second item, I am selecting the third item. Okay, that is possible. How to prove that is correct? Any argument? 001 is proved to be correct. How?
The sum
My,
of weights should be less than W.
you see, first you look into that. That predicate has got 3 states. Let us say 000. So my initial condition is 000. If you have not selected any item, that is true. So it holds the initial state. Fine. We always start with the initial state before the computation, that is 000. So step number 1 is over. Second, P holds after K step. What the P will hold after K step? First K bits will have some values, right? First K bits will have some values, maybe 1000 up to x1 value is 1, x2 value is 0, x3 value is 0. So xk value is 0 say. So P holds after the K if it holds before the steps K. That means the partial solution with K is possible. Now you need to prove how the partial solution K plus 1 is constructed. Partial solution K plus 1 is constructed by taking previously K selection plus 1. Okay. So this is the P holds after the step K if it holds before the step K. Okay. That means it want to say that up to K it is correct and up to K plus 1 it is also correct. That is construction of the solution. Let us say 1000 up to xk is correct. So the next item selected will be also correct. If P holds when the algorithm terminates, then output of the algorithm will be correct. When the P holds the algorithm to be correct, into a 0 1 knapsack problem. When all the bits are being treated, if P holds, that means whenever I'll have a value for xn, there are 4 items, let us say x1, x2, x3 up to x4. Whenever I'll find that x4 holds a value, then only the algorithm will correct it. That means when all bits. So such predicate P is called an invariant of the algorithm. Okay, so if you are referring to the 01 knapsack problem and you look into any termination condition or any 4-bit, that will be invariant of the algorithm. It is called an invariant for the simple reason that it is always true. That means if I am running my algorithm and if I am selecting, let us say, the bit with a random fashion, so 000 is a solution, I'll definitely get 1000, also that will also likely I'll get, and 1100, that is also condition I'll get. So it is called an invariant for the simple reason that it is always true. That means I'll be getting that value. So this follows by the induction from the first two statement above. Just now I have explained, if you are proving for 1 to true up to kth item it is true, so k plus 1 is to be true, and if it in a writing it is true for all n. So it is useful invariant because of the third statement. So indirectly if you look into that, it try to club up the basic proof of induction into the control structure or the for loop or while loop to prove the correctness of the algorithm. Again, I repeat, the basic induction hypothesis or induction proof method is used to prove the loop invariant property, which is can be applicable to the for loop as well as to the while loop. Okay. Now, this loop invariant, again we define, is associated with a given loop of the algorithm. So maybe it's a for loop, maybe it's a while loop, and it's a formal statement about the relationship among the variable of the algorithm. So here if we look into the for loop, there are also variable I is involved, n is involved, n might be the static to define the limiting condition. Okay, so it is again a repetition, initialization, maintenance, and the termination. It is a true prior to the first iteration of the loop. Maintenance, if it is true before the iteration of the loop, it remains true after the next iteration. Okay, and the termination, when the loop terminate, invariant gives us a useful property that help us to show that the algorithm is correct. So what I mean to say, if I have n number of items, I am performing n number of trials, so I'll be finding a in solution, or you can say I am finding a particular invariant that represents or that guaranteed that all items are visited. If my condition is that the algorithm stops when we visit all, the algorithm is tested or is justified. So again, the repetition loop invariant uses these three conditions: initialization, maintenance, and the termination. Whenever you look into the algorithm, if you have a while loop or a for loop, the same condition is applied. Look into that. This is a insertion sort algorithm that uses a help loop, and from the statement number 5, it clearly indicates which one is the domain of the loop or domain of the while loop. Okay, looking into the domain of the while loop. So first it comes to the invariant one. So invariant one consists of originally the array containing j minus 1 element, and originally this elements array is not in a sorted order. So this is the precondition sometimes for the insertion sort. So that will take us the invariant one. Okay, now the invariant 2, which argue that this Aij at a particular instance, when you finish the Aij, that a arbitrary element Aij are such that each key is greater than equal to key. Because of the sorting property, we select the key as the first element when we start with, then we go on comparing and perform the insertion. So the invariant, second invariant 2 is Aij are the each key, for each key it obeys that. So I'll be taking a small one so that we, okay, this is the first to be, you want to reverse a array. As I say, we are looking into typically a swapping routine to do that. So prove that A is of size n reversed as the result of invoking reversion array. So this is the small program which is written, and we need to prove that the algorithm is correct. So anything about the precondition? Precondition is definitely you are taking an attempt in an empty array or non-empty array. You are taking a condition for empty array or non-empty array.
Non-empty array.
Non-empty array. So that will be the condition. So the example we are going for non-empty array, we arbitrarily select any position. So you look into this argument before the iteration of a while loop. It describes the I and j are the condition. Let the points to a single element, that is location number 4, that is address number 3. The element is the 33. Okay. Now when you are looking into that, this a I plus 1 j plus 1 is reversed. Okay, so that means the next two elements is be getting reversed with a I value and j. So if you are going to write down it in general, it supplies the in general. You look into the last line. So it starts with reverse a0 to a1, and there is a additional element is there. If that from a1 to, let us say, with a finite element is sorted, if I'll take a0 an additional thing, so that will be also the left hand side. So this is the loop invariant. You look into the last statement, you have to reverse. You are adding a state a0 and rest of the array a1 and a2. That is found to be true. If we sort, there's, let us say, a1 to up to some finite number, it is sort, and you have taken a new element a0. Then if you look into the right hand side, that is again to be appear in order, that is from a0 a1 up to a. So this is the argument of the first. Second, to prove the loop invariant, which is always follow a induction process. Induction you start with a induction hypothesis. So first one, you look into the arbitrary element, and upon the loop entry, the j minus 1 will be less than equal to I plus 1. It is obvious. So what is the inductive case? We'll find out it is for 1 it is true, for kth iteration it's true, and then it will be true for k plus 1 iteration. That means the number of bits which you are going to reversed is finite k, and the number of bit which is going to be reversed when additional bit will be the added. So then the third, prove the correctness property using the loop invariant. So if we look into this particular example, after the loop terminates I equal to -1 and j equal to n, the loop invariant tells us that a I plus 1 to j minus 1 is reversed. That is the element at position I plus 1 and ij minus 1 is reversed. So therefore, if you look into, if you go on spreading this I and j, that I moves to the leftmost side, j moves to the rightmost side. So we'll have a condition a0 to an minus 1 is reversed. So this is a very simple argument to prove. Now, as I say, the problem statement is appeared like this specification. A formal statement of the software component is meant to accomplish. This is called the specification. So the question will be, let us say, selection sort meets its specification. Okay. We'll be looking into the another example, that is for binary search. So with binary search, we can argue in the similar way that we know the preconditions for the binary search, and the rather than one condition, the two condition of the binary search. Usually for most of the studied like complexity and others, the iterative binary search is always referred, except when we talk about performance analysis in terms of a big O notation, we refer to the recursive one, which is meets the divide and conquer paradigm. But for actual analysis, iterative binary search is preferred. Okay. Now, how do you prove that it is correct? That is, given a is sorted, a contains the target, prove that binary search A target that item which you are searching always returns the target's index within A. So the first thing is that there is no such condition that you are not getting the response. So your precondition, you can say the search which is performed, that item is present inside the array. Okay, that is with the one condition we can argue prove that the binary search A target is the item to be searched, always returns the target's index within the A, because we have assumed that that item is present at some index of the A. As we have assumed the item is present at the sum index of the A, then whether I can reach with all possible comparison or less than that. So you are reaching that with a very less comparison or other than for n number of comparison. So now for proving into the loop invariant, uh, will be like this, that we have discussed with the previous one also. So we'll be this is try to explain you with example. Say we are searching for the number 14 and here you have see the number 14 is not available. Okay, so at each step while loop, low and high is under the actual location to which the search will be made, and this was always true because the algorithm decides the range within which the search has to be performed, that is with the mid value. So the algorithm is true. This is always true that the search will lie within that limit. So we can prove the loop invariant. So construction of the loop invariant is also very much similar. At each iteration of the while loop, L0 and high is meeting the condition A L0 is less than target and HI. This is the property of the element when we are looking into a search I mean the array which is already sorted. So L0 is definitely less than HI, and if you are going to place a target in the best condition or in the worst condition, you will be finding either it will be the last element or it will be first element. So there is a equal to, and also it may be less than that. So this is the uh, in generalized formula that AL0 will be less than equal to target and less than equal to HI. So this is the construction of the loop invariant. Third one, as I said, is again similar to that, that is a induction step. So you are saying L equal to 0 and HI is equal to the maximum length. So then L0 and Li encloses all values, so the target must be between L0 to LHI. Then if you will prove it is exceeds by 1, this also holds, then it is a loop invariant. So inductive hypothesis, suppose at any iteration of the loop, L0 and Li are still enclosed the target value. So you assume that the target value is always enclosed within the starting index of the array and the ending index of the array. Now, we try to now argue the item which is to be searched is with a variable target, and we try to find out the condition under which we are going to find out the mid value. So the case one, when the mid is greater than target, we have some action, less than target we have some action, otherwise it is the item for which we are searching. So either the cases we present a inductive hypothesis to the next loop. So otherwise what you need to do, for each iteration you need to test L0 is always increases, HI is always decreases by 1. So this value will converge definitely. You have a finite number of array, one pointer grows, the two pointers moves in the same direction. So you will be finding a condition when this converges to a single location. So that is the condition shown that L0 equal to HI. By the induction hypothesis, AL0 is less than target and less than HI, because this is the induction hypothesis, because this is the binary search property through which we can detect. That means the number which you are searching, the target is the search number. Definitely few numbers are left to that and few numbers are right to that, unless and until the low and high is either of them is equal to the target. So how will you prove the change if target is not in the array? That means the second condition is that we have to prove the correctness of the algorithm. So it has to address the two things. The item is present, item is not present. Can anybody tell me what will be the complexity of the binary search when we fail to find out the element. That item is not presented in the array. What will be the complexity?
Login.
Log in,
sir.
you are
Login.
log in, log in. So in the last step, you are convinced the item is not there, right? Each
Yes,
time you
sir.
divide the problem into two subproblem, if I look into the tree, at the last step only you are able to say the item is not present. Yes, last step,
Yes,
last
sir.
step, last step you are going to say. So now why this happens, how you will relate. Let us say this is the inference. In the last step you conclude that the item is not present, but what you need to prove in inductive hypothesis or in the method of that, or in the correct, in general, say in the correctness, what you are going to do, what is your input precondition, what is your precondition?
Sorted array and the
Sorted array.
item
Sorted
what
array
we are
for
finding.
unique.
Distinct
So is,
element.
so each the precondition is related to this post condition.
No, no.
Then it will be not correct. Is the how
Yes,
this
sir. Because
precondition, you see how this
same
precondition is
precondition we
related.
are assuming.
Yes, we assume, agreed.
We assume that the item is present.
I we assume that the item is present, right? But what you need to prove, if you prove that it is correct in like this, if you find that you made the target, then you are proving your hypothesis is correct, the target is present, right? And
Yes.
suppose the item is absent, is it going to indicate anything? We should not bother, because our objective is to prove that P implies Q. P is the item is present, right? What is the last statement? After successful search, what you are finding? You are finding an index.
Index, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
that is the argument only. Because the precondition, I assume that the item is present. My precondition is actually implied to the post condition, because my post condition, when the algorithm terminates, I find out the location where that item is present. You
We
write
means
this much?
we are bothered about only P implies Q, not Q implies P.
Huh. No, no. Depending on the algorithm. This is the P implies Q. So in sometimes when you fail to P implies Q, what we used to do? Negation of Q implies negation of P. Is it true? P implies Q. Negation of Q implies negation of P. Is it correct?
Yes, sir.
Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is the another approach. For this you are proving, because the element is there, you prove P implies Q, so that the algorithm stops, and as you say the element is there, that element is the index. Otherwise you use the negation argument to do that. Okay, so please go through both the examples I'll be sharing, because there are a few more stops I'll add to this PPT. So 3 or 4 example, but where it will be used, as I say again and again. So this may not be useful to you immediately, but we need to discuss that. This is the question you see. This finally I want to say. This is taken from the book. Insertion sort meets its specification. This is the way you should write on your report or the thesis. Okay. 1 or 2 example if you'll study, you see. Initialization, maintenance, and one more step I have not written down. So this is the question. Insertion sort meets its specification. So whenever you are proposing a new algorithm, you will write also name of the algorithm meets its specification. Okay. So arguments are very simple. Just you look into the one condition, you argue that the algorithm terminates. You then similarly you meet the loop's end condition n. Then also algorithm terminates, and that means any of the condition is met during the reassignment of the variable. That Suppose I will be incremented I plus 1, I plus 2, I plus 3. It meets a condition that algorithm stops, loop stops when I equal to n. So this is the argument through which we prove the correctness. Sometimes this is typically appears in your first chapter of the algorithm book or algorithm text. So again, I am repeating again and again, because if we not finding this is not being used when writing the thesis, and the quality of thesis is going to be affected. Because sometimes people say what I am going to write, and nowadays there is a plagiarism. People try to check. You cannot copy many things from the many people. You need to write something which is your contribution. So this is one of the approach which is totally will be your contribution, and your percentage of the plagiarism will be definitely low. And if you copy all the models, all the algorithms other people have written, definitely there will be a match. And we normally not accept plagiarism. um, I mean sometimes 15%, sometimes 10% on the report also. So that's why it's a critical. We cannot write, we cannot copy an existing algorithm. Even if we copy, we need to do the proper citation. So this is the one area which we have experienced. People didn't much applied this correctness to the algorithms. Okay, so this is with the correctness. I'll be supplementing few material to the correctness, but we will not discuss the correctness. We'll move to the next portions. And one more thing, I have uploaded uh, to the site. You can check there. There is example of binary search. Okay, this is the file is starts with BS correctness argument. BS correctness argument, uh, that also you can refer. BS correctness argument. Okay, this is more or less said what we have discussed. So I think this is, you can say, a answer to a question that write down the binary search and prove that the binary search is correct. Okay, I just say
Sir,
yes, please.
sir, in last class you said na, that institute have some plagiarism. What you said that how can we use them?
We will be issuing, actually we are heavily loaded. You will be, you can use your login name, because I supposed to issue all the master students. Hopefully by next week I am going to do that. Now the major challenge is to assign the password and other to the first year students. There are 1200 students, we are working on that. But we got the license this time, 5700 license. We'll issue that to individual. Your login name will be your roll number, and password is by default it will take the password from for your mail one. If in change in policy you will be intimated. That is, Turnitin you can access anywhere. It's a cloud based software, so it can access, but we have not enabled that. Maybe we will be starting with at least okay, I can start with computer science. I just need to instruct my team to do that. Okay, maybe we'll be trying with the computer science people. Let me instruct today. Okay,
Okay.
let me instruct today. But it will be created. Usually we provide this to only to PhD students, right? And master students has to take the help of the PhD students for the plagiarism check. Till last year this was the practice, but this year we got more license. I have 5700 license, so I can activate those things. But one thing, before any of you have attended the webinar for plagiarism, I mean how to check plagiarism using Turnitin, because one of the precaution is that whenever you are checking something to be the plagiarism, don't try to save it. Once you will save your work in the plagiarism portal, and next time you are checking the work, it will show the 100% plagiarism, which is a common mistake. That's why if you do some groundwork and go for reading that what are the basic steps to for the plagiarism check using Turnitin, that will be helpful. Otherwise, every time you have to send a mail to the HDCC or to the help desk, sir, I have a copy of my file is there in Turnitin account, you delete it. Let me tell you, the process is like this. We cannot delete it immediately. We put a request to the national level Turnitin admin and they do the needful. Sometimes it takes 3 to 4 days. This is the object oriented approach. When you enter, you'll be finding a class to be created, and once the class will be created, you can check and you can assign also the plagiarism, the what type of plagiarism policy you want to use. We have keep it open. That means 3 consecutive word is plagiarism or 2 consecutive word is plagiarism. So that is option is available. That option is available. Okay. So the site is turnitin.com, and if you want, I can share even. It's not sharing. Actually, I have opened that one. It is sharing something else. Okay, let me try to activate that one uh, so that you can start checking the plagiarism. That is must. We will actually, as I told, we are going to club up that thing with to your MS team. When there will be submission of the assignment through the MS team, it will automatically check. If you have copied some portions from your friend's assignment, it will automatically check. Because that is the additional feature available. Okay, we'll stop with this. Tomorrow, just I'll be ready at that time. If the camp is going on, definitely you'll be attending that one. But I'll be available. Uh, but it will be optional. You may go for. I mean, definitely, almost certain that we are not going to have the class because if the good number of people are attending, and I'll be compensating my class with extra class. I think I told you the decision of the heads group meeting that your courses will continue up to the 15th, but subjected to approval of the Senate, and the teachers are being asked to take the extra class to complete the course. Okay,
Yes, we received the mail.
got the mail, na? Okay,
Yes,
okay, thank you. So we'll schedule it, and I'll just have a talk with the other faculty so that there will be non-overlapping of the slots, so that we can keep the slot on the Saturday or other days. Okay. I think the department is working on that. It will be intimated to you. Okay. So today you have any extra class after this? Any of your group is having class?
Yes, sir.
What time? What time?
4:15.
4:15. Okay.
Yes.
None of the people are having class before that. Huh? Okay. No, maybe in some days that when we try to that, if you're getting some extra time, we can manage. We don't record any extra slots. Okay. Thank you. Then I have to be in other assignment. So I close the meeting. Tomorrow I'll be there at 1 p.m. I'll be there. We'll decide depending on the progress. Okay. I hope you will be getting the mail. Let me talk to their who I had been. Okay. Okay. Thank you then.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.